Hello, everybody. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Just
can hear.
okay.
Sital, can you do one thing? Can you show your PowerPoint also?
Yeah.
You go to screen share.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Is my first slide visible?
Yes, yes, visible. Can you open your video? Let the students
Yes.
see you
Yes.
and okay. Not open. Yes, fine. Today we have a class by Sital. Let me introduce Sital also. She has been working on migration and diaspora. She did her MPhil from JNU, then she was teaching in Jesus and Mary's College for several years. Now she shifted to Manila, Philippines, and she's working with so many, her own project on migration community, migrant community, diaspora community. And Sital, you are from which place? If you can
Orig-
also.
yeah. Originally, I am from Jharkhand, sir.
Okay, Sital is from Jharkhand and she's working on many issues, internal migration also, international migration also. So she was very much interested, in fact, to interact with you. I thought, let's find a suitable day, and today she could find. So Sital, you can, if there is some missing in my introduction, you can fill it up and start. Okay?
Firstly, I have to thank Sadanand Sahu, sir. So he has been my mentor since my MPhil days. So everybody, it's like a great honor that again, I am in connection with Sahu, sir. He is giving us the opportunity. So it's I am very humbled that sir gave me this chance digitally that we have been able to, take social sciences ahead, and this is one of my favorite subject, studying about migration. So migration was actually the first subject that we bonded during our MPhil days in JNU. So sir used to come to JNU for the GRFDT. So that was the time when this journal, which is now blossoming, this root has really taken its deep core both inside the ground as well as internationally. So again, very humble and thankful. So I am very grateful that you gave me the opportunity.
Thank you, Sital. I think we are reconnected now. We'll
Yes.
see something good
Yes.
happening together. Okay. So nice. I could see some, good appreciation from you, and I feel good. But you are also appreciating more than I deserve. So, okay, Sital.
Okay.
I think you have around 45 minutes.
Okay.
Make it interactive because students are also, they have attended another class. They may be having, caringness.
Okay.
So
Okay.
make it short and sweet.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sir. So I'll take from here. Thank you. So, everybody, welcome to my class on migration and diaspora. And firstly, I would like to wish everybody here a very happy new year. So, this is a very auspicious period from Southeast Asia. I'm currently based in Metro Manila. So, if you can hear the fireworks right now, it is mainly because of the lunar year. So, today we are celebrating the Chinese New Year. So, on this day, I would take and carry on with the next class called migration and diaspora. So everybody, if you have questions, so let me finish at least 5 slides and maybe you can put it in the chat box, and then that's how we go ahead. So I will lecture, and any doubts post my lecture, please feel free to put it in the chat box or raise your hand. So it will be an interactive discussion. Okay. So, to start with, what do we understand by migration? So, the basic meaning here, what IGNU, we, and especially this particular program, what we understand in this MD1E001, I hope you know your program, Gender and Diaspora. So, in this, we understand migration. So, in migration, we mean we are either pushed or there is a pull, you know so this is very important to understand. If we see India, if we see locally, and especially if you're based in New Delhi. So New Delhi is quite a melting pot where people from all sorts of backgrounds, people from all sorts of races, people who speak different language, they believe different faiths. Now, even when we talk about gender, we do not have just two categories. If this category within our own territory has become very fluid. Fluid means, when you write down, when you're students also, especially in many universities, you just do not have the male and the female, you have others. And now India is quite open and even taking categories of the gender as transgender. So people have kind of accepted, especially academia is quite moving ahead with what we understand diaspora. So my particular topic is select case studies, old and new. All right. So in this particular uh, presentation, the important objectives that I will be teaching you is understand the historical trajectory of Chinese and Filipino women migration. So this will be very interesting. So I know it would have been very hectic. You are doing back to back classes, but I assure you that I hope the Chinese New Year will bless you, especially the dragon now. So anything that is noisy, so you feel free that you should just absorb the festivity from Metro Manila, that we will study about the Chinese, particularly women. So if you are interested in gender, if you are interested in anything that brings your attention to why women now is getting the due, it's actually a long paid due, but she's now getting it. So that's the first point. We'll understand the historical relevance. We'll take you through the history, something like if you talk about again India again was a colony, and that was the time during World War I and World War II. We were, again, there was a lot of push kind of, I hope you understand two types of migrations, very basic: push and pull. Push is something that, because of what do I say? The basic would be the religious persecution. So, you're pushed out of a certain territory. So that's how the communities of particular faith, particular race have been pushed out. So there has been ethnic cleansing. So all that is push. Pull, on the other hand, pull kind of an attraction. Pull is something like what Uncle Sam, the US community, people from India are again migrating heavily into the dollar nation. So that's like the pull. That's how the communities are attracted to. So we will go into the deep details of what was the story between the Chinese and the Filipino women migration. Number two, I'll talk about examine the role, function, and policies of the host and home countries in perpetuating or discouraging gendered migration. Now we have to understand host. Like, if I talk about my instance, my homeland is India. So I still am a passport holder of this great nation. So for me, the homeland is India. And the hostland is the country where I am currently residing. So this is what is the basic meaning of host. So my current hostland is Philippines. So this is the basic meaning of the host and the homelands. So we will do it as the second objective: examine the role, function, and policies of these two countries in perpetuating, that is like encouraging, allowing, or discouraging gendered migration. So definitely men and women we're talking about here. Thirdly, describe the changes brought in the home and host country societies by women migrating to developed economies. So, how women are bringing in a lot of changes because of their both qualified and other skilled sort of migration. Fourthly, we will understand the contemporary issues related to gendered migration and its impact on global migration. So, contemporary is something that is current. So, these are your few objectives that the presentation is all about. So, going next is my introduction. So the first word here is case study. So I hope you understand what is case, but in very simple terms, these are in-depth details. These are studies which has the finer details which are used for a comparison, to make policies, something like for example, in MBA classes, in management classes, there is a lot of case studies. There are in-depth case studies. When you do a research, when you do a report making, if you are interested in a subjective understanding of a particular population, you do a case study. Now, here in this slide, I have given you the examples of case study of prisoners. So, this is purely the IGNU materials I'm referring to. So, here, a situation in real life can be looked at or studied to learn about something. The company's recent history is a case study in bad management. So, uh, if you know, in New Delhi, you have the biggest jails, which is called the Tihar jails. There, plenty of case studies have been done, how they have compared the life of hardcore criminals or the the political crimin people who are behind the bar. So there can be different kinds of case studies, but in our case, in our chapter, when we are talking about gender and migration, we mainly talk about why and what are the reasons of people moving out of their homeland or coming back to their homeland. So case study is basically an in-depth, a very thorough, detailed study where you collect data, where you assess or you make an assessment from history perspective. So this is the basic meaning of case study. So if you understand, there are so many important diasporas apart from Indian diaspora. We have the Irish diaspora, Chinese, one of the biggest, strongest diaspora. If we talk about the Jewish diaspora, that's where when we study or start the study of diaspora, you always talk about the Nazi concentration camps, how the Jewish were, thrown out of their homeland, how they got into different parts of the Western Europe. So that's the story of the Jewish diaspora, and particularly World War II is very, very relevant, and how Germany under Adolf Hitler became an important part of the history, that how he uh, ruled a nation in a dictator form. So that's Jewish diaspora. Then Indian diaspora, Indians have always been migrating. India has always been a trading, a very rich community. So before the the Britishers coming over, before the Raj coming into India, we have seen Indians, particularly coming from the Kshatriya caste. That's the caste that's into the trading. So they have always been into exchange. They have always been into the movement where they could find their
Sital,
market.
Sital.
Yes, sir.
I think Kshatriyas are not the trading community, Vaishyas.
Sorry, yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, correct. Yes, thank you for the correction. Yeah. The Vaishya. So, yes, as per the caste system, we have the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras. So, thirdly, if we talk about the trading caste, is particularly the Vaishyas community. So, all the communities, this particular community has always been moving from the north to the south in search of the spices, the tea. So before the Britishers coming in India, we always had the internal movement where people were looking for better market. So even if we talk about the the bazaars of the tribals from any part of India, be it the northeastern part, there were always the bazaars. The women, especially, if you talk about the Khasi community in the Meghalaya area. So women were into the bazaars. People used to move in. People used to move out. So that's a little story about the Indian diaspora. How internal migration, because of market purpose, there was this movement. And then I won't be going to the details of the Black diaspora. So now going to the next slide. uh, the process of migration is not linear. So what I mean by here, it's just not one straight line. So there are many dependents, and depends on various other factors like immigration policies. So the policies of a country are very, very important as what is permissible. So as per the the policies of a country, the person who's moving in or person moving out becomes a legal migrant. The demand of skilled and unskilled manpower, and sometimes a change in the geopolitics and demographic imbalances, which favors a particular type of migration. So, as per the demand of particular skills, particular, unskilled manpower. Something like, if I talk about the third world countries are the main suppliers of the unskilled manpower. If we see the Gulf migrants, from India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. So there have been many people who were unskilled laborers who migrated and made a good life for themselves. So that's how, the people from the third world going to the more developed countries in a lookout of better opportunities have been continuously looking for the greener pastures. And this is one type of a migration. The latter type of migration was seen during World War One and World War Two. So yes, India was a colony for over 200 years. So we have seen, different types of migration under the British Raj. That how the Britishers forced the Indians. So if you all are aware of the indentured laborers or the coolies, how Indians, especially from the belt of Uttar Pradesh, Bihar now. So these are the people now who are ruling the island population of the Maldives and the Seychelles. And that's the story of how the Indians now make a major population of these particular islands. So World War One did, make a reason why people from different colonies migrated to different countries, but on a forced reasons. Now, next slide is in all forms of periodic migrations, the gender has come to play an important role. So how now what we'll talk more is, how men previously were the main migrants, where uh, opportunities, better opportunities, economic opportunities definitely were the reasons for the pull factor. So you always see men were going out, and there were times it was temporary. So it wasn't really permanent when we see periodic migrations when it comes to the men going out. So they used to do a good trading and come back to their family. So that's how, historically we see men initiated most of the migrations. But now, post globalization, things have changed mainly for both these countries, including us. So the main countries that we are focusing today are China and Philippines. With the change in socioeconomic conditions in the host and home countries, gendered migration is favored. So, as the policies became more hospitable, the communities became, the melting pot. Cultures changed. So, when culture, I think, is the softer part, if that goes for a change, the policies definitely become pro, migrants. So that's how the fabric of host and home countries have been impacted by the socioeconomic conditions both in the homeland as well as the host land. Now, in this module, what we are studying are Chinese and Filipino women migrants and diasporas. So, initially, as I said, the men definitely started off, you know, both as the forced migrations, where the Portuguese were kind of bringing them out in the Southern American part of the world, and they were made laborers. But there are different skills, skill sets, classes, which makes this Chinese diaspora very interesting. Now, we will be talking about the historical trajectory of the gender migration, how it leads to the formation of distinctive, as how it is very different diaspora compared to, I mean, there are so many diasporas in the world, but the Chinese have shown their power in terms of monetary wealth, in terms of culture, their soft culture, and how there are these little Chinatowns everywhere in the world. And gender is very, very important here. Now, the historical trajectory of Chinese diaspora formation. So, the early history of Chinese diaspora begins with the saga of indentured laborers. So, this was the time, again, the colonialism was there. We were a British colony ourselves. And at this point of time, again, the Chinese laborers were being imported, to Macau, to its Latin American and Cuban colonies. But much before the indentured labor, so much before the colonialism, the Chinese had migrated. So this part is about voluntary. So the Chinese had migrated to Southeast Asian countries as business guys. They were traders, explored trade routes in South China Sea and the Indian Ocean during the 14th century. So South China Sea again is currently, this is one of the very important seas which again connects China to Philippines, also the country that I'm currently located in. So this is again a very important sea route for all its business. So it goes back so old, to 14th century. And if you remember during the times of the Buddhism in India when it flourished, the Ashoka period. So that was again the time where Buddhism was again going from India towards the Southeast Asia. So you can see it's a very interesting part as how Indian borders via the culture, it was quite fluid. Uh, there were lots of Indian Buddhist monks, who were going towards the East Asian parts and kind of, were the ambassadors of Buddhism. And that's how India, being the birthplace of Buddhism, you can see most of the Southeast Asian countries have much more of the population who firmly practices this faith. So that's again another part of the story of how migration, brings a lot of cultural aspects apart from the economy, the job opportunities, and how China has become a very powerful country now. While these traders were temporary migrants who went out for lucrative trade, there were others who settled down in some of the trading posts. Temporary trade migration has been one of the most defining features of the old Chinese diaspora. Since we are into the section of history, these terms are very important. So kindly make a note of these terminologies. Qing Su Kik, which led to the coinage of the term the Chinese sojourners. So this is what the term is, Qing Su Kik. These migrants were known to move from one place to another, looking for greener trade opportunities without a permanent site of the settlement. So, the basic English meaning of the term sojourners is someone who is there temporarily. So, yes, this term Ching Siu Quick is again, a community who traveled for a time where they could make good money. So they were traders, they're looking for better opportunities. So they were temporary in nature. It was only the men. So again, understand the gendered form of migration. It was men who would migrate to distant lands, and the woman would remain at home tending to the domestic duties. So even at this point of time, the gender division of labor is very clear, and the roles were heavily performed by the male and female. So the female is taking care of the domestic chores. So anything with the household activities, anything with the kitchen duties, anything with the care duties, anything and everything with nurturance, with childbearing, child caring, was particularly performed by the Chinese women. So the Chinese men here were going to distant lands and getting good wealth. So they were trading to different parts of the world. They were traveling via the sea route. They were coming through, coming to India. They were coming to Southeast Asia, and they did make good money. This was one of the distinctive features of the gendered migration in the old Chinese diaspora. Now, unlike the Chinese old diaspora, the new diaspora, so coming to the latest one, something that is very modern. So, if you are from West Bengal, there are these settlements, in Calcutta, there are these places which is almost like little Chinatown. So, there again, you still see people from the Chinese community where they still have not assimilated with the locals. So their culture is same, they speak their language, they cook their own food, and that is what is their USP. So this community sells, on soft culture, on how they dress. So something again, I'll repeat today, is Chinese Lunar Year. So even in a different country, in Philippines, on Friday, that is yesterday, it was a national holiday declared a week back. So by the lunar year, today is actually the new year for the Chinese. But because of the dominance of the Chinese diaspora, yesterday, including the government bodies, it was declared a holiday. So that's how a diaspora, making a homeland in a different country. So uh, it's a two-way policy. Even the government is quite hospitable, and they know the strength of the dragon, and they open their doors to the Chinese, that if they are bringing in good business, to the locals, so they do accommodate such a festival on a very large scale. Okay. However, the new Chinese migrants, whether men or women, have continued to retain, as I said, social, cultural, and religious ties with mainland China. So the land that they come from, so they have it very socially closely knit. They are carrying forward to any other countries that they travel to. And the social networks, very important, and the social networks within their overseas community. So something like now in the US, they build their communities, and it's almost like a ghetto, that they find it a safe haven, that the Chinese speak their own language. It could be Mandarin. They speak their, and they live their culture. So like, for instance, for again today, so today they are dressed up in their social national costumes, and it's celebrated throughout the world. And since China is one of the most dominant diasporas globally, uh, you can see, for instance, like, to talk about in a very light note, you understand Hollywood. You see, before Priyanka Chopra making into, Hollywood, I mean, lots of Indian actors are there in Hollywood, but none like, as a celebrity, the grandeur that Priyanka Chopra carries. She is a celebrity. Like, actors, they are acting like Nasiruddin Shah, plenty other actors like Shabana Azmi, they have acted in Hollywood. But now an actress like PC, she is making India proud. So she is again, a symbol of the Indian diaspora in the West. So similarly, you see Hollywood, lots of Chinese diaspora is already settled because of their business. It could be in restaurant business, it could be in the banking sector. And I think from the last 20 years, you see Chinese people, actors, prominent names. It could be like Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee. Amongst the female, it could be Lucy Liu, Michelle Yeoh. So Chinese diaspora have made it even in Hollywood and globally through its policies, through its business ties, banking sector again. So, and there are other reasons why the Chinese diaspora is doing well, because again, the government of that country has been always pro diaspora since the 20th century. Now, the emergence of Chinatown, a cultural and commercial hub of Chinese people. So we see Chinatowns in India. We see Chinatowns, the pictures that you can see. There's a small boy raising the American flag. So this is a slide about how the Chinatown is flourishing, it's booming, and it's making a lot of money in dollars in the US. In place where they have settled down is another striking feature of the ethnic community, a community which looks different, where the race is a very important factor. Now, for example, in the New York metropolitan area, an urban enclave housing the largest ethnic Chinese migrant population, women came to play an important role. They would remain at these permanent sites of settlement, looking after shops and businesses and playing an important role in cultural dissemination. So why do we think that, we are studying gendered migration? Because now, uh, since globalization has headed, and we know the story of India since the 1990s, all thanks to the open door policy, things changed. Globalization, liberalization, it changed the Indian market, it changed the stocks, it changed the value of the rupee. Now how it looks like, we know how the Indian diaspora is very strong. So if we first talk about the, I think if not exactly a political narrative, but yes, since the current government, we see, where is the Indian Prime Minister going to make speeches? So the answer is Indian diaspora. The stadiums are full, the houses are full, the money that is coming, it's definitely the diaspora. Similarly, we see, in the Chinese diaspora, they are again the backbone of the Chinese economy. So they are playing in all fronts. The Chinese diaspora globally. So not only in the US, where they have a Chinese, residential area in one of the very expensive cities. New York again is a very expensive city in the world. So they have a central location in the heart of that city, ruled by the Chinese, where they display all their religious festival fervors publicly. So it is again quite well accepted. So there will be black backlash, that is quite natural. So there would be, things that, because it's a human culture, it's a human society. Nobody, no community likes the community coming from overseas, well settled economically. So that's how one country sees, the host land sees, there is always this clash between the host land and the homeland. So they would remain at these permanent sites of settlement, looking after shops. So these, I mean, the Chinese people, they are taking care of business, and most of the culture is taken care by the women again. So when it comes to bringing up their kids, taking care of the culture aspect, particularly, the language, how Mandarin is spoken at homes, how the lunar festival is taken, what food is cooked. So this is again one aspect. Women become a very important character, how she is able to take forward to the next generation. Now, very important dynasty. This is again going back to the history. This is just the picture of the Ming dynasty. So we will talk about the dynasties here. So during the Ming dynasty that ruled from 1368 to 1644, so that's like the first dynasty there. And how did this ruling family clan took care of the Chinese people going in? So the first overseas migration of Chinese people, it started off in the 14th century under the Ming dynasty. So people, the communities were the traders and the businessmen, and it was a well accepted thing that under the Ming dynasty that the communities were allowed to go and make trade. There were various waves of such migration. As Southeast Asian regions and later to North America, South America, Europe, Caribbean, and South Africa. So different waves we will study under the trajectories of migration of the Chinese community. So firstly, again, I would like to remind you of the Ming dynasty. So this is, we are dealing with the 14th century. So do remember, make a note that the Ming dynasty was quite hospitable to the traders that allowed them to go overseas and make good business. So each of these waves created its own unique demographic. So demographic is again with that region and settlement patterns, and was responsible for gendered migration and connection with mainland China. So even in the study of migrations, the first wave that we are talking about here is like, this was quite gendered, and how the community kept its network, its connection with mainland China was the reason. Like all the networking, all the movement, the to and fro, the men moving in and again going back with that kind of wealth, with again bringing in or exposing the home with different cultures, so it wasn't just one sided, so it was a two sided thing. So coming back to the family, bringing in different things, maybe you come from Indonesia, you come from Philippines, you travel back to your family, you bring different local stuff to that homeland, to your mainland China. So this was creating a pattern. So this is what it means by first wave of migration, that especially towards the East Asians. So initially, and the Southeast Asia from the mainland China, it's quite close. So that's why you see, people in Singapore, Indonesia, Hong Kong, they have a very strong Chinese diaspora, and they kind of rule. Most of the policies, the businessmen, the lobbying are from the Chinese diaspora. Now, this is a slide of how the Chinese went overseas and what was their job profile. So, in addition to the previous slide, the settlement enclaves in the East Asian part, the Southeast Asian part, there were other travels also. So, there were regional variations in the immigration from China, as some of them belong to Fujian and others to the Guangdong provinces of China. So these are just the regions, and how communities traveled to different countries. Now, in the year 800, 1800s, during the 1800s, some of these economic migrants, mainly men, went to California and San Francisco because of the gold rush. So different continents had, different callings. So the pull factor. So during the 1800s, there was this gold rush. So US and then Canada again in Africa. So different big countries had their gold rush, and people from different parts of the world migrated in search of the gold. Workers as unskilled labor in gold mines and railway construction. So if you can see these black and white pictures, I hope the slide is all visible, and I hope I'm not going too fast. So, students, can you just give me a thumbs up or something in the chat box that I know you're all with me? Everybody? Okay, I have one question here. Praful, is Praful still here with me? Can I see a wave of hand? Okay, the question here is how women are bearers and transmitters of culture. See, if we base ourselves to India, you know, why is a particular community, telling women to wear saris if it is a national day, if it is a very important holiday? So we see women from senior generations are very happily wearing the Indian costumes. It could be salwar kameez, it could be sari. Then if we see the cooking, I am from North India. Most of my life, my childhood has been in Delhi. So I can take the example. The most biggest festival is Diwali. So Diwali, as a school student, had been extremely joyful occasion. We started collecting money. We did rangolis. And that point of time, firecracking wasn't a pollution thing. So it was permissible. So we see most of the women doing everything. So the rangolis were done by the women voluntarily. Okay. So the food at home is cooked by the woman. The costumes, you know, it's mostly worn Indian, be it the jewelry, be it her makeup. If we see, what is the traditional outfit of a married woman, we will see anywhere in the part of the world. If it is anything with marriage, we see the sindoor, we see the Mangal Sutra, we see the henna. Again, henna, mehendi is very globally accepted. Madonna has accepted. So that's how, women are, people gender where it is expected, and how it is now become normalized. And when we go into the feminist studies, then yes, there is that study is always about, questioning. It's always about challenging why to accept the norms, what is normal. So that is how we see women in one particular community and women any part of the world. So when we are talking about the Chinese diaspora, the women again are mostly wearing their red colored, costume. Same goes for Philippines. It's mostly the women. So they are the bearers. And why transmitters? Transmitters is, if we talk about right now, I can quickly give you the example of the Sikh diaspora. So anybody who has been to a Gurdwara, you will see any part of the world, especially the US, they have these language classes. So they might be speaking very American English, and they might not know Hindi, but they will know very good, they can read Gurmukhi. So who is teaching that? That is not the father. So that is how women becomes the transmitters. So the Indian community, and particularly the Sikh diaspora, based in US or Canada, that kid of the next generation might not know Hindi, but would be more fluent in Gurmukhi, all thanks to the female teachers and definitely the grandmom or the mother and not the granddad. So that is how we see women are bearers and transmitters of culture. So yes, somebody said there is two Chinatown in Kolkata. So again, when we see a diaspora in India, they preserve their culture. They are, they are marketing their traditional things of what they eat. So again, the food business is doing extremely well in Kolkata. Okay, so do I have any more questions before I get back into the slide? Can I get a thumbs up if my speed is all right? You're understanding me. Let's make it interactive, students. Can I get more questions? Anything on Chinese diaspora? Any doubts so far?
Hello,
Anybody
ma'am.
wants? Yes.
Ma'am, I wanted to know, that we see the Chinese settling in uh, Southeast Asia, and these migrations which happened before the colonial rule as well. So, taking that in account, how was since many of these migrations, gender was women were not going also. There was also this one factor. But in case we see that, were there any kind of uh, otherwise, were there some family migrations, or also when I think after I think the rise of China, uh, after uh, uh, the rise of communism and all of that. So, were there people coming back to China? And I mean, that unification, or the position of then those immigrants, or not immigrants, but the Chinese, the people from Chinese descent coming back to live in China, and yeah, around that, and gender in there.
Okay. To your first question, initially it was purely the men who were migrating. So as I read out, the trading community. So the tradesmen via the sea route or the land side, they used to just go temporarily and used to come back home. So at that point of time, the gendered migration were purely men and women of the historical types, and very purely patriarchy was purely observed during that kind of, especially under the Ming dynasty. So the first two dynasties have always been uh, patriarchal. Men getting the bread and women taking care of the kids, the family, the anybody in the family who needs to be taken care of, as in the nursing activity, the nurturance activity, the food, the cooking, child rear care. So first two dynasties was very much responsible, as it became very traditional. They wanted to be very traditional. But 1800s onwards, and especially if you talk about communism, that point of time, women started going out, but something like feminism. When feminism initiated, there was a lot of revolt, there was a lot of backlash. So during the initial period of the 1800s, women were going out, but it wasn't acceptable. There was a lot of challenges. So at that point of time, the modern century, things were hard for women. But the Chinese woman was going out. There were a lot of crimes, especially in the outer side, especially if she was not highly qualified, if she was not educated, and uh, the policies also were not very gender friendly. I can say that within six months, the Chinese woman had to go through pregnancy tests. So she had to ensure something like in Ireland as well as the Northern Ireland, abortion is banned. So, something on the same lines, women were particularly monitored and controlled of their sexuality, that if they are something like in India, we talk about honor. The Chinese woman again is going out in a different community. So she has to come back in the same bring back the same honor. She cannot bring shame to the community. So it's just very recently from, I think, since the time the China has taken off as a manufacturing capital, and since its territories have gone everywhere, when we see the dominance of the China in Maldives, if you just talk currently, so now China is very powerful. They have so many banks. So since China has captured the world globally in all sense, military strength, money strength, the money wise, how that country is able to give loan. So post that, we can see the Chinese woman is now in a space where she is able to fight. She's no more voiceless. So that's how we can see the gendered migration of the Chinese woman. I hope I've been able to
Thank you,
answer you,
ma'am. Yes,
Shresha.
ma'am.
Anybody else before we wind up? So, China again, it's very interesting because we see Indian diaspora is coming up. So we can see how the current government, we will see more of the speeches by the current prime minister in all the dollar nations, I could say. So just China has set the ball rolling, and that's how we can see that the previous government did not encash much of the diaspora, and the current government, I think they have the case study. So we started about the case study. So I think the Chinese case studies are well enough for us to see, that that's why Indians, and especially when we say the Mumbai or the early Bombay people, they always wanted to. We have movies also called Bombay will turn into Shanghai. So that's again aspirational. So it's not only the strong communities, like India is a land of doctors. India produces first class, international class white collars. Silicon Valley is owned by us. It's definitely us. Google is owned by us. So many people. So the brains behind most of the big corporates, are, I mean, especially if we talk about 2023, 2024, this year we have seen CEOs of Indian origin primarily. So India is doing well, and that's how the government encashes it, and it gets back. It strengthens economy. It's a win-win game for both. Now Indian origins are very happy to come back to India, invest more. So that's how the government, and I hope the tax payers benefit from what we are studying diaspora. So it's just not a case study to study and just observe, but it this entire study will delve more into understanding the soft aspects also, because apart from the policies, apart from things that can be done as change makers, activism or things like that, but we see diaspora studies nurtures the students of not seeing people going outside as somebody who is uh, Gaddar, because there are so many countries, they see even Chinese diaspora in one of the dynasties saw people leaving their country as Gaddars. I hope you understand Gaddars, traitors. So it's not that. So now people come, people travel, people come back. And the movement is again, just like gender, diaspora, the migration again, uh, it's fluid. It's like again we start with the term as sojourners. So a person living in a particular habitat temporarily. So migration is the cycle. It could be with so many 1,000 reasons. Okay. So students, can I wind up before I leave? Okay. I can take still, I still have 1 more minute. I can take a question or either verbally.
Ma'am, I have a question, ma'am.
Okay.
When I was preparing my assignment, during the assignment, I go through the many reports and all that. And I find out a gender gap report of this year that we are on 135th place in 2022, and now we are at 227th place in 2023 out of 145 countries. And when I searched whether we are whether we are degrading now or from years, then I find out the global gender gap index of 2014. Then I saw that we are on 114 place. My question is whether we are moving towards the welfare of women or be degrading their values.
Wonderful question, Praful. So it's like from a teacher to a student. Numbers do not lie. So that's how I end this, question. I hope I'm
Thank
able
you.
to answer somehow. So numbers are facts. Facts are objective. So that's it.
Okay.
Okay, Praful. Shrestha. So thank you so much. So have a nice day. I'll end the class.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you too.